The galactic council chamber hummed with the low murmur of countless voices, a tapestry of languages woven together in a tense symphony. Representatives from dozens of species occupied the circular hall, their expressions ranging from amused curiosity to quiet disdain. At the center of it all, seated atop an elevated platform, was Chancellor Orvex, a towering being of crystalline physiology, his voice like grinding stone as he called the session to order. "Delegates of the council," Orvex intoned, his many-faceted eyes glinting beneath the artificial lights. "We gather to discuss the petition of Earth, a species still young in the cosmos, eager to carve its place in matters of war and peace. The question stands, do they possess the fortitude to stand among us?" From a seat near the chamber's heart, Zyrek of the Thalkesh Empire rose, his reptilian form draped in ceremonial armor that gleamed like obsidian. "With all due respect, Chancellor, we waste time debating what is obvious." His gaze swept the hall, then landed on the lone human among them. "Earth's people are fragile. Their biology is ill-suited for prolonged warfare. Their history full of conflict, yes, but nothing compared to the unrelenting sieges of the Vexari or the burning campaigns of the Dreth Dominion. And their women." He let out a soft hissing laugh. "Are nurturers, not warriors. They would collapse under the weight of true war." A ripple of agreement passed through several council members. Others simply watched, waiting to see how the human representative would react. Elara Voss had remained still until now, her gloved hands resting on the cold metal before her. She had been warned that the council would be condescending, dismissive, that Earth was seen as a minor world, untested in the fires of galactic war. But this outright mockery was something else. Slowly, she pushed back her chair and rose, her tailored black uniform catching the light as she stepped forward. "Counselor Zyrek," she said, her voice measured but carrying steel beneath its surface. "I find it fascinating how freely you speak of war as if you hold its essence in your very blood. You claim we are untested, that we lack the stomach for battle. Tell me, is that belief born of ignorance or arrogance?" Murmurs filled the room. Zyrek's amusement flickered, his slitted pupils narrowing. "It is born of observation. We have seen your records, your reluctance to engage in full-scale interstellar conflict. Your kind clings to the notion of diplomacy as if words will shield you from the horrors beyond your borders." Elara tilted her head, as if considering his words. Then she exhaled, slow and deliberate, before placing both hands on the table and leaning forward. "You think we cling to diplomacy out of fear?" she asked. "You mistake choice for weakness." Zyrek scoffed. "A convenient excuse." Elara's lips curled into a smile that held no warmth. "Let me enlighten you." She took a step closer, her voice carrying now, filling the chamber. "On Earth, we have known war since before we knew the stars. We have fought over land, over ideology, over survival itself. And do you know who bled just as fiercely as our men? Our women. We have commanded armies, led revolutions, carved empires from nothing. When the world burned, we stood in the flames and made sure the enemy burned first." A hush settled over the room. Elara continued, her voice unwavering. "You claim our women are nurturers, and you are right. We nurture our children, our people, our worlds. But that is precisely why we are dangerous. There is no greater fury than one who protects what she loves. You speak of war as a game of conquest. For us, war has always been personal." She straightened, her gaze piercing. "So when you sit there and suggest that Earth's women would shrink from war, that we would collapse, I wonder, are you truly so blind? Or are you simply afraid of what happens if you're wrong?" Silence. The weight of her words pressed against the chamber like a physical force. Zyrek bared his fangs, a flicker of something, uncertainty, shadowing his expression. "Fine words," he said at last, his voice quieter now. "But words mean nothing without proof." A slow smile crossed Elara's face, something dangerous flickering in her eyes. "Then let me offer you proof." And with that, the tide began to turn. The chamber remained eerily silent after Elara's words, the weight of them lingering in the air like the charged static before a storm. Across the room, dozens of alien delegates shifted in their seats, some exchanging wary glances, others watching her with newfound scrutiny. Zyrek, however, remained motionless. His slitted eyes flickered with something unreadable, irritation, perhaps, or the first flicker of doubt. Then the silence broke. "You claim your people know war?" Zyrek said slowly, his voice low and measured, though tension coiled beneath it. "You speak of history, of battles fought long before your species ever left its cradle. And yet, what I see before me is a diplomat, a politician who speaks boldly but wields no weapon. If your kind has such fire, where is the proof?" Alara did not flinch. She knew this moment would come, the inevitable dismissal, the demand for something tangible. Words alone, no matter how sharp, would never be enough to shake centuries of alien prejudice. But she had never come unprepared. She exhaled slowly, reaching toward the embedded controls in the council table. A simple gesture, and the air above the circular hall shimmered to life, the chamber's central hollow display projecting a vast array of images and records, shifting and flickering with historical weight. At first, only Earth itself was visible, a vibrant blue world suspended in the void, deceptively peaceful. Then the wars appeared. The projection split into a dozen fragmented displays, each showcasing a different time, a different battlefield. The delegates leaned forward, eyes reflecting the cold blue light of history as the past unfolded before them. "Let me educate you," Alara said, her voice steady. "This is the siege of Tenochtitlan. A city burned, its people slaughtered, yet its warriors fought until the very last breath." The image shifted. "The night witches of the Eastern Front," she continued, as ghostly figures of Soviet female pilots emerged, their biplanes cutting through the darkness like specters of vengeance. They rained fire upon their enemies, silent and unseen until death was upon them. Another flicker, another moment in time. The Dahomey Amazons, an elite force of women who faced colonial empires with nothing but blades and sheer will. They did not surrender. Zyrek's expression remained unreadable, but some of the other delegates murmured among themselves. Even Chancellor Orvex seemed intrigued, his crystalline form shifting slightly as if absorbing the information. Alara stepped forward, the hollow images now casting shadows across her face. "You see, Counselor Zyrek, war is not alien to us. We do not speak of it lightly, nor do we engage in it carelessly. But when we do," she gestured toward the flickering battlefields, "we do not break, we do not yield, and our women have never been mere bystanders." Zyrek leaned back, exhaling sharply. "History," he muttered, "dust and echoes, proves only that your kind has fought, not that you still can." Alara's fingers twitched. She had anticipated resistance, but the sheer arrogance in his voice struck a nerve. She let the historical images fade, replacing them with something more recent. The screen displayed a desolate world, charred cities, smoking ruins, the wreckage of starships littering the sky. "This," she said, "was the Battle of Karthosfor, a human colony under siege by pirate warlords. Outnumbered, cut off from reinforcements, the pirates expected them to surrender." She turned to Zyrek, her voice a razor's edge. "They did not." The projection zoomed in, revealing security footage from the war-torn streets. A squad of soldiers moved through the rubble, armor bearing the insignia of Earth's defense forces. At their head was Commander Lin Zhao, a woman barely in her 30s, leading a counteroffensive that would turn the tide of the siege. "She fought for 7 days without rest," Alara said. "Her forces were outgunned, her supplies dwindling, and yet she held the line until reinforcements arrived. Those who surrendered were executed. Those who fought to the last were honored. We do not fight for conquest, Counselor. We fight to win." For the first time, Zyrek did not respond immediately. Alara could see the way the room had shifted. Delegates who had been indifferent were now watching with careful consideration. A few even nodded in approval. The weight of history, of undeniable reality, pressed against the walls of the chamber. Zyrek's jaw tightened. You are an impressive speaker, Ambassador Voss. But words and history are not the same as standing on the battlefield. You claim your people, your women, can stand against the horrors of war. Alara smiled, but there was no kindness in it. I do not claim. I know. A long silence stretched between them, taut as a drawn blade. Then, with the slow, deliberate certainty of someone who had made a dangerous decision, Zyrek turned to Chancellor Orvex. If the humans wish to prove themselves, he said, then let them do so in the only arena that matters. The room stirred. Whispers spread like wildfire. Orvex's many eyes regarded Zyrek, then shifted back to Alara. Are you suggesting a trial by combat, Counselor? Zyrek's fanged mouth curled into something between a smirk and a challenge. I am. A ripple of excitement passed through the assembly. The Galactic Council was not one for blood sport, but the ancient rite of combat as proof was not unheard of. Alara could see it in their faces. Curiosity, skepticism, even admiration. Orvex turned to her. Ambassador Voss, will you accept this challenge? Alara met Zyrek's gaze, and for the first time, she saw what lurked beneath his arrogance. Uncertainty. He had not expected her to push this far. He had not expected Earth to command the room. She took a step forward, her voice ringing through the chamber. I accept. The chamber erupted into a flurry of murmurs and hushed conversations, the weight of Alara's acceptance sending a ripple through the gathered delegates. A challenge had been issued, and now there was no turning back. Zyrek's smirk faltered for just a second before he straightened, his golden eyes narrowing. He had expected bluster, not commitment. Chancellor Orvex's crystalline form shifted slightly, his many facets glinting under the artificial lights. Very well, he said, his deep, grinding voice cutting through the noise. The rite of combat is a serious undertaking. It is not a simple matter of proving strength, but of demonstrating resolve. If the ambassador of Earth wishes to proceed, the council shall observe. Alara nodded, her expression betraying nothing. She could feel the tension in the room thickening, pressing against her ribs like a vice. She knew this was more than just a test of her own ability. It was a test of Earth itself. If she faltered, if she lost, then the doubt cast over humanity's place in the galaxy would only deepen. Zyrek stepped forward, arms crossed over his armored chest. The challenge is accepted, he said, his voice cool and measured. We shall fight in the arenas null, under standard combat conditions. No outside interference. No retreat. Victory is decided by either surrender or incapacitation. Alara met his gaze, unwavering. Agreed. The formalities concluded, the council members began their exit, their whispers trailing behind them like fading echoes. As the chamber emptied, Alara turned on her heel, already moving. She had preparation to do. The arenas null was a colossal structure, an arena designed for ceremonial combat, its walls lined with the battle-scarred echoes of centuries past. Though duels were rare, their significance remained deeply ingrained in galactic tradition. This was not a place for mindless violence. It was a proving ground, a crucible where reputations were forged or broken. Alara stood at the edge of the training platform, her fingers flexing as she adjusted the grip of the combat gloves she had been provided. Unlike Zyrek's heavy, obsidian-plated armor, she had chosen a lighter exoframe, prioritizing speed over brute force. Strength was not her advantage. Precision was. She turned as footsteps approached. Commander Lin Zhao, the woman from the Cartho's footage, strode toward her, arms folded. Her gaze was unreadable, but there was a flicker of approval behind it. I heard the news, Lin said. You realize this isn't just about you, right? Alara exhaled. I know. Good. Lin's expression softened just slightly. You've trained for this. You've fought before. But Zyrek isn't just some battlefield opponent. He's a Thalkesh warlord. He's lived through sieges, exterminations. He's not going to fight fair. I don't need him to, Alara said, adjusting the straps on her forearm bracers. I just need him to lose. Lin studied her for a moment longer before nodding. Then make sure you do. The arena's lighting dimmed as the crowd settled. Dozens of delegates, officers, and ranking officials had gathered to witness the challenge. It was a rare spectacle, an Earth representative standing in the circle of honor, a place where only the strong earned the right to be heard. Alara stepped onto the sand-covered floor, her movements steady and controlled. Across from her, Zyrek loomed, his scaled armor gleaming under the cold glow of the overhead lights. His claws flexed, and for the first time he grinned. "You could have walked away," he said, his voice carrying across the arena. "You could have remained the diplomat, the negotiator. Instead, you chose this." He tilted his head. "Why?" Alara tightened her stance. "Because I don't need to prove that humans can fight. I just need to prove that you were wrong." A chime echoed through the arena. The duel had begun. Zyrek moved first, his speed belying his heavy frame. He lunged, claws slicing through the air, aiming for a quick, brutal end. But Alara was already gone, sidestepping with practiced efficiency, her exoframe enhancing her reflexes. She struck, her elbow snapping forward into his side, but his armor absorbed the blow with barely a flinch. Zyrek twisted, his tail whipping around in a blur of motion. Alara ducked, barely avoiding the strike as the force of it kicked up sand. She rolled, regaining her footing in an instant. He was fast, but he fought like a warrior used to overwhelming his enemies with strength. That was his flaw. Alara feinted left, then pivoted, her knee driving into his ribcage. This time he felt it. Zyrek snarled, lashing out with a clawed fist, but she caught his wrist, twisting sharply before delivering a punishing blow to the joint. A crack echoed through the air. The crowd murmured. Zyrek staggered back, shaking out his arm. His amusement had vanished. "You're full of surprises," he admitted. Alara didn't respond. She was already moving again. The fight continued, a dance of precision versus raw power. Zyrek struck like a beast, relentless, unyielding. But Alara adapted, her movements sharper, more deliberate. She exploited the gaps in his defense, wearing him down, forcing him onto the defensive. Minutes passed, each exchange more brutal than the last. Zyrek's breathing grew heavier, his movements just a fraction slower. He was strong, but he wasn't unstoppable. Then Alara saw her opening. As Zyrek lunged once more, she dropped low, her body twisting beneath his strike. With one swift motion, she drove her fist into the exposed gap beneath his ribcage, a nerve cluster she had studied in Thalkesh physiology reports. Zyrek froze, his body seized as pain shot through him, his muscles locking up for the briefest second. That was all she needed. Alara pivoted, driving her elbow into the base of his skull. Zyrek collapsed, his body hitting the ground with a heavy thud. Silence swept through the arena. The duel was over. Alara exhaled, stepping back. She didn't move to gloat, didn't need to. The moment spoke for itself. Then slowly Zyrek stirred. He pushed himself up onto one knee, breathing hard. His gaze met hers, and for a moment, there was no anger, no arrogance, only understanding. He lowered his head in a gesture of acknowledgement. "I was wrong," he said, his voice quiet but firm. The council chamber erupted into applause. Alara turned, meeting the gaze of the gathered delegates. She had proven what she came to prove. Earth would no longer be dismissed.